We are diving deep into a geopolitical event that is really moving markets right now. It's forcing investors to completely recalibrate how they think about risk in U.S. manufacturing. We're talking about a presidential executive order. It came down on January 2nd, 2026, and it's compelling a total divestment in a very crucial but, hyper niche corner of the semiconductor supply chain. And get this, the dollar amount of the deal, a modest $2.92 million.
Barely a rounding error.
Exactly. But the implications, they're astronomical. So our mission today is to unpack this decision. What does the White House blocking an already completed acquisition really reveal about national security oversight? And how does this one action redefine the risk for any foreign direct investment in U.S. tech moving forward?
Well, the order was, as you say, just astonishingly targeted and fast. President Trump ordered a company, Hiefo Corporation, to divest all interest in these critical assets it bought way back in April 2024.
Right, from the former Emcore Corporation.
Right, exactly. And the whole basis for this was acute national security risks that were identified by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. CFIUS.
So this wasn't a warning shot. This was CFIUS reaching back in time to undo a done deal.
It was a full-on deal reversal. Long after closing. The assets they targeted were Emcore's digital chips business, specifically their whole indium phosphide or NNP wafer design and fabrication businesses.
So not just the IP, but the physical factory too.
The whole thing. That included the manufacturing facility in Alhambra, California, a very specialized piece of industrial real estate.
That sends such a profound signal. Because in the grand scheme of the semiconductor market, $2.92 million is nothing. It tells you this isn't about money. It's about a very specific technology.
It is.
So let's start there.
Yeah.
Why Hiefo? And what did the White House flag about them specifically?
The executive order was, let's say, unambiguous. It stated very clearly that Hiefo is controlled by a citizen of the People's Republic of China. And that the whole ownership structure, the management, all of it presented credible evidence that the company might, and I'm quoting here, take action that threatens to impair the national security of the United States.
So it's not just about owning an asset. It's about who holds the keys.
It's all about who holds the keys, who controls the future of that asset.
And the consequences for Hiefo? What happens now?
They're swift and, brutal. Hiefo has a hard deadline, just 180 days, to fully divest everything.
And what about the tech itself, the IP?
That's the critical part. They have to either destroy it or transfer any sensitive intellectual property related to those assets. And it's all under strict U.S. government oversight.
Wow. So for an investor, realizing a completed deal can be unwound like this, forcing a fire sale and maybe even destroying the IP you bought, that's the very definition of intervention risk.
It is.
Which brings us to the tech. What is NNP? Why is this one little slice of the semiconductor world so mission critical that it gets a presidential order?
Right. So we're moving way beyond the silicon chips you find in your phone. We're talking about indium phosphide, ENP, which is used for photonic devices.
Photonic. So it's about light.
Precisely. Think of NNP as the foundational material for anything that needs to move data at hyperspeed. Silicon is great for, general computing, but it really struggles with generating and manipulating light efficiently.
Okay, so where do you need that?
These components are absolutely essential for optical communications, for high-speed sensing, and crucially, for the guts of high-bandwidth AI networking. The fastest data centers, advanced defense systems, they all rely on it. We're talking about components like gain chips, coherent light laser chips.
So the building blocks for moving massive amounts of data really, really fast.
Exactly, with minimal energy loss. In the context of an AI arms race, you can see why NNP is considered a strategic choke point.
And the government's risk assessment wasn't just about the factory as it stood, right? It was also about what Hiefo was planning to do with it.
That's where it gets really interesting. Because to produce these things, you need incredibly specialized processes. One of the main ones is a type of advanced additive manufacturing called MOCVD.
MOCVD. For anyone not in the clean room right now, what is that?
Think of it like a multi-million-dollar 3D printer, but for atomic layers. It lets you grow perfect crystal layers like indium phosphide, literally atom by atom on a wafer. The equipment is one thing, but the recipe for how you do it, that's the critical IP.
And Hiefo wasn't just planning to keep running the old recipe.
Not at all. They filed for a California sales and use tax exclusion for a $13.5 million facility upgrade.
A $13 million upgrade on a $3 million asset.
Yes. And this wasn't for routine maintenance. The investment was specifically to enhance that MOCVD environment to mass produce higher power laser chips, pushing output from 100 milliwatts up to 200. They were signaling an intent to scale up a capability that the U.S. government clearly views as a national security asset.
It's fascinating because Hiefo wasn't some anonymous foreign company. It was co-founded by two guys, Dr. Genzao Zhang and Harry Moore, who'd spent nearly 40 years combined at Emcore.
It looked like an insider deal, a management buyout.
But the control, that 51.99% stake held by Asia Pacific Environment Investment Limited.
That was the flag.
Right. That confirmed the foreign control, and it underscores the complexity. You have these founders with decades of proprietary know-how, the MOCVD recipes, all the process secrets, and they effectively took that knowledge base and put it under foreign control.
And you have to look at the parent company that they came from.
Exactly. The rest of Emcore, which is now Emcore LLC, is almost entirely focused on aerospace and defense. We're talking inertial navigation systems for the military, high-end stuff.
So even though these NNP assets were sold off as a small separate unit, they were spun out of a core defense supplier and were directly applicable to defense components.
That's the crux of it. The tech, the equipment, the know-how, it was all just too sensitive to leave under foreign control. Which raises the big structural question. If this was so critical, why wasn't this deal reviewed up front? Why didn't they just file with CFIUS voluntarily?
And that, right there, leads us to the biggest takeaway for investors, the huge changes in CFIUS enforcement.
The old playbook was, if you're a small deal, not explicitly military, maybe you don't file and you just hope to fly under the radar. Is that playbook now totally obsolete?
It's malpractice. The CFIUS review here flagged 3 risks: foreign access to know-how, loss of technical expertise, and possible diversion of U.S. supplies of these NMP chips. But the key lesson is how they found it.
They weren't notified.
The transaction was not voluntarily filed. CFIUS found it themselves.
Years later.
They blindsided the company using their enhanced non-notified transaction monitoring authorities. These came from the FERMA Act.
FERMA. So what does that mean in practice? How are they finding a tiny 2-year-old $2.92 million deal?
Well, CFIUS now has a dedicated, non-notified transactions team. Their entire job is to conduct continuous market surveillance. They use commercial databases, open source intelligence, tips from other agencies.
So they're just constantly scanning the market.
Constantly cross-referencing business registrations, facility filings, even real estate records against a list of critical technologies. The whole enforcement posture has shifted. Before FERMA, if you didn't file, you'd probably get away with it. Now, not filing provides zero safe harbor.
And they can come back anytime.
Indefinite jurisdiction over non-notified deals involving critical tech. And this case proves they're using that power. The low price of a deal is no defense. They are watching.
So if you're an M&A lawyer today, the risk calculation has it's flipped on its head.
Completely. The cost of a mandatory filing and a 6-month review is now way, way cheaper than a forced divestment years down the line. That's the big takeaway. The post-closing intervention risk is dramatically higher, especially for anything CFIUS calls a TID U.S. business technology, infrastructure, data. The price tag is irrelevant.
And this crackdown, this very granular action, it seems to fit into a larger, maybe even contradictory, U.S. strategy on the global chip war.
It does.
On one hand, you have zero tolerance for foreign control of U.S. IP, like these NNP chips. But at the same time, you have the White House floating this idea of allowing high-end chip exports like NVIDIA H200s to China.
That dual approach is fascinating, isn't it? The proposal for the high-end exports is that the U.S. Treasury would get a 25% cut of the proceeds. It's a very transactional America-first strategy.
So the argument is that previous blanket bans were hurting U.S. companies.
Right. They want to protect the core IP and manufacturing capability here at home, that's the Alhambra facility, but also monetize the global demand for the finished high-end products.
So protect the foundational science, but sell the finished product for a price.
That's it exactly. The signal is, if you touch the manufacturing and the science needed for our defense and AI industries, you will be blocked.
Oh.
But if you want to buy the final product, we can talk for a fee.
All right, let's shift gears. It's time for the segment where we look at the chaos and propose an outrageous but plausible investment thesis.
Yeah.
This is our not financial advice segment.
Okay, so the whole trade idea here comes directly from the forced divestment itself. Because of this executive order, a set of critical NNP manufacturing assets, the MOCVD gear, the facility, the know-how, are about to be orphaned.
Right, they have to be sold, and sold to a domestic buyer, within 180 days.
The government has basically put up a giant neon sign saying these assets are too strategic to fail. They have to operate and they have to be run by an acceptable U.S. company.
Which creates an immediate government-mandated scarcity. And the pool of potential buyers has to be incredibly small.
Very small. It has to be a certified domestic entity that CFIUS would approve. Given the asset's history and application in defense and AI, you're looking at a very specific list of companies.
And because the original deal was so small, a buyer could get a huge piece of a niche supply chain for a relatively low price, or so you'd think.
Well, that's the thesis. We're looking at a long-term strategic investment in U.S. domestic defense contractors, or maybe systems integrators who specialize in things like precision navigation, fiber optic gyrotech, integrated optoelectronics.
The likely buyers?
They're the likely pool of buyers, yes. The need for a secure domestic NMP supply chain is so acute now, it's going to drive a significant premium for these assets.
So the idea is that securing this capacity is a massive competitive advantage for these defense suppliers. It guarantees their supply for future military and AI contracts.
Exactly. So they will be willing to pay substantially more than the original $2.92 million to lock it down. It's a forced sale that, ironically, could lead to a premium bidding war among a very small group of domestic players.
The chaos of a reversal creating a consolidation opportunity. It is a compelling trade idea.
So, to summarize, a small, non-notified deal has just become the clearest and most aggressive example of CFIUS's enhanced powers. It confirms the old strategy of flying under the radar is well over. But this all raises one last provocative thought for you to chew on. The government is strictly protecting the critical hardware supply chain, these NNP chips. But some experts are sounding alarms that the big push for rapid AI adoption in defense, this whole AI arms race logic, might be leading to lowered safety and security thresholds for the software.
So a contradiction.
A potential one, yes. Are they being incredibly strict about protecting the factory floor, the physical hardware, while implicitly accepting a higher risk in the AI software that's going to run on that very same hardware?
A question of whether security stops at the factory gate or if the algorithm itself needs the same level of protection. Definitely some food for thought. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. And remember, this is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. We hope this gave you the insights you need to navigate these complex markets. We'll talk again soon.